Hello and welcome to episode 7 of Leadership 101. Quick-fire lessons in leadership designed to help busy youth and children's ministry leaders invest in their leadership development. We really hope that this content will help you develop your gifts, sharpen your skills, and flourish as a leader. Ready? Let's go. One of the great privileges of my job is that I get to travel around and visit many different churches, youth groups, parachurch organisations, festivals and events. The good news is there is wonderful diversity in the church. Nowhere else would you find such an eclectic mix of ages, cultures, nationalities and social groups united together under one banner. The church is a beautiful thing. And yet, amongst all this diversity, they all hold something in common. They all have a culture. Your church has a culture. Your group has a culture. Your team has a culture. Even your meetings have a culture. You may not be able to articulate it or describe it, but make no mistake, your ministry has a culture. So what do we mean by culture? Well, your culture is a set of often unwritten rules and values that determine behaviour within an organisation or ministry. Simply put, culture is how we do things around here. So how do we establish a healthy, fruitful culture within our children's and youth ministries? Well, I agree with Dr. Henry Cloud on this one, who said that what you create and what you allow is what you get as a leader. Spot on. Our culture, it's always a combination of what we create and what we allow. So with that thought as our foundation, here are 4 keys to establishing a healthy culture. Number 1 is that you've got to name it. If as a leader, you haven't explicitly named the culture of your ministry, it does not mean that it hasn't got one. It means that it has an accidental one. An accidental culture is one which has evolved organically according to the behaviours of the most influential characters in the group. So, you know about this because when Jesus spoke about the yeast of the Pharisees, he was describing how the behaviours of a small group of influential individuals quickly permeates an entire culture, though it doesn't necessarily serve the good of the group. So if you want to have a healthy culture, you have to name it. You have to write it down. You have to talk about it again and again and again until you're blue in the face. And after you've named it, you have to model it. The people you lead must be able to look at you as the leader to see an example of what that culture looks like. So let's say, for example, that you've named a culture for your team that everyone arrives on time for every session. Well, guess what you need to do? Or perhaps you're seeking to build a culture of passionate worshippers amongst your children or young people. Well, guess what you need to be? One leader said it like this: leaders must never expect from others anything more than they're willing to deliver themselves. They should never expect higher levels of commitment, creativity, persistence, or patience than what they themselves manifest on a regular basis. Once you've named your culture, it's up to you to model it. And then you have to challenge it. Now, I'm willing to wager that this is the first Christian video you've ever watched that will encourage you to be intolerant. But if you want to establish a clear, healthy culture, intolerant you must be. Not of individuals, of course, but of behaviours that conflict with the culture you are creating. Business expert Patrick Lencioni writes, "Great cultures tend to be appropriately intolerant of certain behaviours. After all, if an organisation is tolerant of everything, it will stand for nothing." Remember, your culture is a combination of what you create and what you allow. Therefore, do not tolerate any behaviors that contradict your named culture, because if you do, those behaviors will become the culture. And we're going to go a little bit deeper into that in the next episode of Leadership 101. And finally, if you want to establish a healthy culture, you must celebrate it. As much as we should confront behavior that subverts the culture, we should also celebrate any behavior that affirms it. Therefore, never miss an opportunity to celebrate somebody who did something in line with the culture you're building. And wherever possible, you do that publicly. If others in your group or your team see you celebrating a certain behavior, they're more likely to replicate that for themselves. You have to celebrate what you want to replicate. So, here's what we do. We name the culture. We model the culture. We challenge any behavior that does not reflect the culture, and we celebrate those that do. Do these 4 things, and you will have a healthy culture in which your children, young people, and your team will thrive and flourish. So guys, thank you so much for all that you are doing to invest in the lives of children and young people. I say it every time, and I'm not ashamed to say it again. I cannot conceive of anything more significant that you could give your life to than passing on the gospel to the next generation. So children's worker, youth leader, keep going. Don't give up, because what you are doing is important.